Here is an example of a partial framework for enterprise risk management where I'm drilling down into categories of operational risk. The categorization scheme in the enterprise risk management framework must be consistent with our categorization scheme in the risk assessment first filter. In that way, for any node in this framework, we can generate the 3 risk grids. For the second filter, we also need to be able to answer the 5 questions of pro-enterprise management at any node in the framework. Let's consider contamination risk. And as you see, contamination risk is split between the 4 existing sites where contamination could occur and the notion of a global contamination risk. The risk assessment second filter will enable the insights in this graph regarding contamination risk. As an example, at Site 3, the expected risk liability for contamination risk is about $375 million in today's dollars. We can reduce that risk liability to about $156 million if we pursue the risk mitigation strategies proposed, and the cost of those strategies is about $22 million. Investment productivity is a return on investment dollar for dollar measure. For every dollar of mitigation spend at Site 3 regarding contamination risk, we expect to protect about $10.9 or $11 as measured in today's or current dollars. Considering global contamination risk and site risk, we see that Site 3 represents the most productive return on investment for risk mitigation dollars. And lastly, at the far right, we see a summary across all contamination risk of risk mitigation liability before and after and spend. And currently, if there are no spends on risk mitigation, we're sitting at about $1.9 billion of risk liability. This type of graph can be generated at any node in our enterprise risk management framework. If we move up one level in the framework from contamination risk to operational risk, we can now compare contamination risk against the other sources of operational risk. And in this case, we see contamination risk that we just summarized right about the center of this graph. The most productive spends for risk mitigation we see are in geographic concentration, internal process, and other. Those are the areas that have the highest investment productivity scores. And once again, to the far right, we see a summary of risk liability and spend with investment productivity across all sources of operational risk. At this point, we're sitting at about $6.4 to $6.5 billion of operational risk liability if no risk mitigation strategies are pursued. And finally, moving up one more level in the enterprise risk management framework, we get a comprehensive view of enterprise risk management, where we can compare operational risk with the other major categories of risk. And in this case, the most productive risk mitigation dollars spent would be on operational risk with an investment productivity of about 2.9. To the far right, we see the comprehensive view of enterprise risk for this corporation. And what we see is there's a risk liability of about $13.8 billion given we make no investments in risk mitigation. You can use this approach to provide an effective measure for terms like risk appetite and risk tolerance if you're using that in your enterprise risk management framework and methodology. In summary, a risk management first filter should be easy to use and understand, require only about 1 to 2 hours of training. It should allow for risk categorization and aggregation or risk pooling. This is a critical component of enterprise risk management. It should also be easily tailored for the various organizations across the enterprise and provide consistent means and measures across all risks. And lastly, a first filter should create a level playing field of comparison for decision making. The risk management second filter should enable return on investment analysis of risk mitigation spending, a crucial component of any risk management program. Risk management remains the weakest link in corporate decision-making. Risks that we can imagine but have not personally experienced have no emotionally laden long-term memory for our subconscious mind to dwell on, to heighten our sense of urgency and need for response. It is only when risks feel real that we decide to meaningfully act. Without the steering of our survival instincts, typically there is no action under an illusion of control and safety. To overcome our neurological blind spot to risks we have not personally experienced, we need risk assessment tools that are rigorously sound, yet simple to use, and leverage our cognitive strengths and minimizes our innate and learned cognitive biases. For more information, visit our website and pick up a copy of my latest book, Problem, Risk, and Opportunity: Enterprise Management.